When I first started homeschooling 12 years ago, I was coming from the place of a former elementary teacher. So I had plans. I had a lot of plans. I had plans that involved a lot of specific curriculum, a lot of lesson planning, and a lot of me teaching my kids. But let me tell you that things have changed a lot over the years, and the way we started in our homeschool is not at all where we are today. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Jess from the blog siloandsage.com, and here we talk about cultivating your home. And today we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive into my homeschooling process and kind of this process that I've gone through of unlearning the school system as a former elementary teacher to embracing a lot of natural interest-led learning and balancing that with curriculum. Now, if you're new here, you may not know that I am a mom of 5, and my oldest is a sophomore in high school this year, and my youngest is in first grade. So I've been homeschooling for quite a while, but when I started homeschooling, I looked at it in a very traditional school system kind of way because that's all I knew. I was an elementary teacher. I taught 5th grade and 4th grade and kindergarten and a little bit of preschool. And I had an idea in my head about what school should look like and what education should look like. And over the years, I've really detached education from school. But when I started, the two were really meshed together because it's all that I knew. This idea of the school system is so ingrained in our culture, in our society, in our mindset. Now, whether you were a teacher or you just went to school, you have some sort of school system mindset because everything in our culture revolves around this system of schooling. Our calendars revolve around it, our schedules, our day-to-day, even work life often runs around this school system. And how we look at education is so framed by the school system. We have grade levels for kids. We have ideas of what they should learn and when they should learn it. We have these standards that we think all kids need to meet at a specific time. And this is where I was coming from when I started in my homeschooling journey, and you might be in the same spot. Now, my first child didn't really challenge a lot of my beliefs around the school system because he was a pretty self-motivated kid. He was kind of a homeschool dream for a first-time homeschooling mom, I have to say. He just did what he was asked, and he was really excited to learn. And then my second child came along, and he was the complete opposite. He did not want anything to do with anything related to school. And I really struggled with this because I had been taught that education looks a certain way, happens on a specific timeline, and he was not matching up with any of my beliefs about education. So I kind of came faced with a choice. I could continue along the road we were going on and continue to pursue this traditional education, but in a home setting, and I could damage my relationship with him and his relationship with learning because honestly, he hated it. He hated all learning. He hated anything that was traditional school. He hated any kind of like formal curriculum or lessons or me trying to guide him into something. Hated it all. So I could have continued to pursue that route anyway. I could have continued to pursue this traditional education method and have this school system mindset. But instead, I chose to change. I chose to unlearn so many things. And I chose to pursue something that really kind of rocked my idea of education. I chose to unschool. Now, you may have an idea in your mind of what unschooling looks like, and it may or may not be true. Many people have this idea in their minds about unschooling or interest-led, child-led learning, that it looks like laziness. It looks a lot like parents just sitting back on the couch, drinking their coffee, and just letting their kids run wild, or letting their kids play video games all day, or never doing any intentional learning at all. But honestly, that is the furthest thing from the truth. This idea of unschooling or interest-led, child-led learning, relaxed homeschooling, there are a lot of labels that are put on this type of learning, but really what it means is that I am not in the driver's seat anymore. I want my child to be in the driver's seat of their learning, and I'm just there for support. Now, if you've ever taught a child to drive, I'm currently teaching my oldest child to drive. He's about ready to get his driver's license, and it's a little stressful to kind of release the reins and to say, okay, you're in charge of this car now, not me. And instead, you give guidance, you give tips, you tell them maybe where to go, you share your knowledge, but you let them drive. And that's kind of what this idea of unschooling or interest-led, child-led learning, whatever you want to call it, that's kind of what this is. It's me saying, I'm not in charge of your education. I'm going to guide you. I'm going to use my knowledge and my experience to kind of show you where we can go to help you get to the end goal. But you as the child are ultimately in charge. That's what I'm saying as a interest-led unschooling mom. Now, you might be watching this video and think, Jess, I just watched your curriculum videos. I know that you use curriculum. You are not an unschooler. And that's right. I do use some curriculum because I don't think that curriculum is the be-all, end-all of any kind of education. I believe that curriculum is a tool. It is a great resource when it works for your child and when you find the kind of curriculum that supports your child in their education. Now, there's this myth that says that to be an unschooling family or to do interest-led, child-led learning, you need to give up all structure and all planning and all curriculum. But that's just not true. We want labels. We like our little boxes. We want our education to fit inside a box and to know exactly what it looks like. But that, my friends, is not how education really works outside of the school system. The school system is a box, but most kids do not fit in that box, which is why the school system is so challenging for many children. It may be challenging because they are far beyond what the kids in the classroom are doing, or they are struggling and behind, which that's a whole nother conversation, or they have different ways of learning, different learning styles that don't match up with what is inside that school system box. Now, with 5 kids, I have a variety of learning styles, and not all of my kids learn in the same way, and they have definitely not all learned on the same timeline. They're interested in different things. They enjoy learning in different ways, different times of the day even. So I have really had to throw away almost all of my ideas about education that I learned in my schooling and in my years as a teacher. So as we're going into our 12th year of homeschooling, I can tell you that I've had to kind of rewire my brain to think about education very, very differently than I did at the beginning. I've actually had to relearn what learning looks like. And once I realized that learning didn't have to look like a specific timeline or textbooks and lesson plans and curriculum, it really freed us up to learn in the way that fit our family. So for a while, we swung all the way to the other side of the pendulum and we used no curriculum at all. We used a lot of books. We used life as our classroom. We would go on a lot of nature hikes. We did a lot of nature journaling, and we just experienced life together. Now, this was very, very easy, I felt like, in these young early years. I had preschoolers and I had toddlers and I had, these like kindergarten and second graders that they loved learning through play. It was the best way for them to learn. My kids learned how to read through play. My kids learned math through play. They learned their numbers, but it wasn't like I just sent them off and said, go play. Now, sometimes, of course, I did that because I was a busy mom. I had a lot of kids, a lot of young kids, and I had kids napping and nursing and diapers and dinner and all the things, right? But I was very intentional. I chose materials that they could learn while they were playing. I chose open-ended toys. I chose materials that helped them to learn how to make patterns and to count things. And I sat next to them and guided them in their learning. I asked them kind of leading or guiding questions like, oh, if you put this piece of the puzzle over there, what happens? Can you turn it around? Like, we had conversations about their play. When we were out and about in the store and we saw letters and numbers, I pointed them out and we said things like, oh, you know this letter, your name starts with this letter. Or we would see a street sign as we were driving and someone would shout out from the back, hey, I know the letter M, mom starts with M. And we would continue to have these conversations about learning and letters and numbers in just a natural, everyday kind of way. As we made cookies and banana bread, we would talk about how many scoops we were putting in. We started to learn about fractions. All of these things were intentional. I never just let my kids run wild. Okay, maybe occasionally I let my kids run wild, but I was intentional about the conversations that we had because I knew that every moment they were learning. They were learning through play, through everyday life experiences, through hands-on activities. And sometimes I chose the activities for them. I would take a bunch of magnet letters and I would put them in a sensory bin with beans or seeds or something, and I would bury them in there and have them search for them, and they would pull out the letter and we'd say, oh, what letter is that? Do you know what sound it makes? We would have these intentional conversations around an activity that was play-based and hands-on, but it was something that I chose for them. It wasn't something that they chose. But if they weren't interested, we didn't continue. If they wanted to play this activity all the livelong day, we would play the activity all day long. And sometimes that happened. And sometimes I would set up an activity and they would play it for 2 seconds and leave a disaster. The beans would go everywhere and the seeds and the, magnet letters would be all over the kitchen floor and I would have to pull out the broom and sweep it all up. And, sometimes it didn't go the way I wanted to go, but that was okay. We were flexible. We figured it out. And as the years went on, we leaned really, really heavily into books. And that was kind of our sweet spot, that we found that literature and journaling was a central part of our education, that we could learn just about anything through a book and with a journal. My kids would draw pictures if they couldn't write. They would write letters, whatever letters they knew how to write. They would ask me, Mom, how do you spell this? And I would tell them. I didn't leave it a mystery. I would maybe, encourage them. If I knew that they were able, I would say something like, oh, well, you know the word mom. What sounds do you hear in the word mom? And encourage them to write the word themselves. If I knew they were able, or if I knew that I could push them and stretch them a little bit to maybe step out of their comfort zone and try something. And sometimes I chose the books. I decided, we're going to start to learn about early American history, and we would start to read books about early American history. When we saw things in nature, I would bring in those books around that specific topic, and we would learn about a specific, plant or animal or insect. And sometimes my kids would choose. Sometimes my kids would be super into dinosaurs. One of my kids was obsessed with dinosaurs, and it's all he wanted to learn about for, 6 months or longer. And we read every single book we could find on dinosaurs. I think our home library at that time was 75% dinosaur books. But he was interested in it. It was definitely child-led learning. And because he was so interested in dinosaurs, my other kids got a lot of dinosaur education that year. Now, as my kids got older, I chose to bring in some different curriculum options. We have chosen to do math curriculum. Since about first grade-ish, my kids use a math curriculum. I brought in pieces of Beautiful Feet books and their history curriculum. We brought in different pieces of science curriculum options. I knew that I couldn't possibly know everything and have the bandwidth to plan out from scratch every single piece of my kids' education and their learning. So bringing in different pieces of curriculum helped to be a guide for us. It helped to give maybe a little scaffolding, a little like boundaries around our learning. Now here's the key for curriculum. Curriculum is one tool. It is not your entire homeschool. Curriculum is one tool that can help your child learn something. So we never built our homeschool around our curriculum. I know a lot of homeschool families that do this. They choose their curriculum, they plan out their entire life around this curriculum, and they live it. They choose to, schedule everything around how this curriculum is going to work. And here's the problem with that. The problem comes when suddenly that curriculum doesn't work anymore, or a piece of it just doesn't fit, or your child doesn't like the curriculum that you love. So we use curriculum as one tool. So if you watched my curriculum videos, you'll know that I have chosen different curricula options. I have chosen different resources to bring into our homeschool because they're tools. They're things that we can very easily set down and walk away from if they don't actually help us to meet our goal. If they don't fit my child's development, if my child is very resistant to them, if my kids figure out a different way to learn the same thing, I don't insist on following that curriculum just because I purchased it or just because I chose it and it's in my plan. That, I think, is the key part of unschooling and interest or child-led learning, is that I don't assume that I know the right way. I don't assume that I have all the right answers for how my child can learn something. I don't assume that I know what's best. Now, obviously, I'm an adult. I do know some things more than my kids, right? I know that if my six-year-old says, "Mom, can I go to the park by myself?" I know that he's not developmentally ready for that. I know that there are certain safety things that if my, 10-year-old says, "Mom, I want to run across this busy highway to go visit my friend," I'm probably going to say no because it's not a wise decision. If my kids want to ride a bike without a helmet, no, there's a hard line of, I know that it's safer for you to ride your bike with a helmet. But when it comes to education, there isn't just one right way. I have seen my kids learn so many things outside of a formal curriculum that I know that it isn't always necessary, even in high school. Now, in my 7th, 8th, and 10th grade curriculum choices video, I showed you the resources that I have chosen to bring in to our homeschool this year for my older kids. Now, what you didn't see a lot of in that video is you didn't see a lot of traditional or typical, high school curriculum like textbooks, workbooks, that sort of thing, because I don't find that it's necessary, even in high school, to shift the way we've been learning. Because we've been learning through books. We've been learning through our life, through our hands-on experiences, through play and interests. And I don't think that needs to change just because our kids are in high school. Suddenly they need to have a textbook in their face in order to learn something. To me, that just doesn't make any sense. So we continue to learn in the way that I know works really well for my kids and in the way that keeps them in the driver's seat of their education. So they are learning through books. They're getting to choose the books that they read with the Read, Think, Write language arts program that I made. They are choosing the type of writing that they do, choosing how they respond to things that they read. And they're choosing things to learn about that I didn't even share in that video, because in that video I talked a lot about the resources that I'm bringing in and the things that I'm choosing, but I didn't talk about the things that my kids are choosing. So I have a middle schooler who loves music. and he spends a lot of his day experimenting with the drums, and he plays the drums, and he's a great drummer, and so he spends a lot of day making music and using GarageBand and figuring out how to do different sounds and make songs. He plays a lot of piano. He's learning Chinese. I think I may have talked about that in that video, but he's doing it all on his own, not because I chose it for him. My oldest loves to write, and he spends a lot of his day laying in a hammock and writing. I don't think at all that this is a waste of his time. In fact, I think it is an excellent skill, and I think it is something that will carry him into the future, even if he doesn't choose to pursue a career in writing. I have a middle schooler who loves animals and science, but he doesn't enjoy anything super structured and super school-like. So he still pursues those interests, but in a non-school way. He pursues them by taking care of our chickens outside and researching the best ways to care for them when they, get lice, or when one of them has a weird thing going on with their eye. Like, he figures out what the problem is and what to do about it. My kids are all runners. My kids are training for half marathons and plotting out the best running routes and figuring out the type of nutrition that fuels their bodies. My kids are all learning how to cook and how to take care of things around the house, like how to fix things and how to, fix a car or take care of a car, how to figure out finances, and how to be an entrepreneur and start a business and get a job. Like, these are all things that they are pursuing because these are relevant to their life. So when the kids are older, this looks a lot different than reading books about dinosaurs and space like they might when they're really little. Now, maybe when they're older, they really, dig paleontology. Did you catch that joke? Dig paleontology. Maybe they still like, fossils and dinosaurs, and they want to pursue that as a career. So they really do a deep dive into that sort of topic. But for my kids, their interests have changed. They're no longer interested in some of those things that they were interested in when they were little. And some interests have stuck. Like my bug lover, when he was 5, he still loves bugs now. And he does a lot of his own learning about bugs and animals and nature and all of that. So in our house, we choose to focus on home, not school. We choose to focus on our values and our interests and our life goals and the things that my kids are excited about, rather than just what school tells us they need to learn about. So we've got all these resources. We have these, some curriculum options. We have a lot of books that we're going to learn from, but we're not stuck in this box. We're not stuck in this box that says, this is what you're learning about this year, and there is no moving from that. We have the freedom to move. We have the freedom to shift. We have the freedom to say, well, I thought we were going to learn about this one topic in this way, but it turns out it was better for us to learn about it in this way. And that, I think, is what unschooling and interest-led, child-led learning is about. It's not about me being the teacher. It's about me guiding my kids into learning, maybe giving them a gentle nudge in a direction that I think they should be going, but being okay with them taking a different approach entirely. It's me saying to my kids, if this doesn't work for you, what's the best way for you to learn it? I see so many parents, whether their kids are in school or homeschooling, I see them pushing their kids to fit inside a specific box. I see them pushing their kids to finish a worksheet page, to do this lesson in this particular way, and they get frustrated when their kids don't. They get frustrated when their kids don't learn the way they expected them to, because our brains are wired for this system mindset. And we have to unlearn that. We have to rewire our brains and be okay with this idea of our kids resisting maybe being good. We're so used to, as parents, like if our kids are pushing back, if they're resisting something, that we just need to push back harder because they're being disobedient, or they're not doing what they're told, or they're not falling in line, or maybe, it might be dangerous if they continue down that path. And there are times when, we need to step in. If your child is about to step in front of a car, you pull them back and you might yell, because that's good parenting. You alert them of the danger and you get them away as fast as you can. But when it comes to education, it's so different. Education is not the same as discipline. Education is not the same as obedience. We need to give our kids the freedom to think critically about things and to form their own ideas. And sometimes that means that they challenge us, that they say, I don't really want to write this. Can I type it instead? Or this lesson says that I'm supposed to, write a report, but I really love art and I want to make a model instead. Giving them choices and letting them tell us how they want to learn something, it revolutionizes their education. It takes it from us being in the driver's seat to them being in the driver's seat. And to me, that has been the cornerstone of our learning. Being able to say, I don't always know the best thing for you. I have your best interest at heart, and I know my own experience, and I can guide you and I can share my experiences and I can help you get to where you need to go. But in the end, our kids have to take ownership of their learning. Our kids have to be in the driver's seat of their own learning. It can't always be spoon-fed to them. So unschooling and interest-led, child-led learning, this doesn't have to look like a free-for-all. It doesn't have to look like no boundaries and no guidance and no structure ever. It can look however you want it to look. And if there's a person out there that tells you that unschooling with a curriculum is wrong, let me tell you that they are wrong, because curriculum is just a tool. It's just one tool in our toolbox, and when it works, it's a great tool. But if I pull out a screwdriver to put a nail in a board, it might get the job done, but it's going to be really, really difficult. But if I grab a hammer, it's going to go well for me, right? It's going to be really efficient. It's going to be really fast, and I'm going to be done with this job really quickly. And curriculum is like that. Sometimes the curriculum you choose is the wrong tool for the job. And sometimes it works really, really well. Like for us, math curriculum. This is a good tool for us in the upper elementary, middle, and high school years. This is a tool, we've changed different curriculum. If you watched my curriculum videos, you know that we've kind of flip-flopped around in some curriculum options for math. But we've always used a curriculum, and that has been a good choice for us. That has been helpful. But when I tried to use a language arts curriculum, I wanted to poke my eyes out because it was horrible for my kids. It was not a good fit. Doing workbooks and these grammar lessons, it didn't work for us. So we use picture books to teach grammar, and we use copy work, and we use journaling, and we use, all of these tools that we have readily available that don't require us to do worksheets. Now, this video might feel overwhelming to you if you have been very ingrained in that system mindset, which, like I said, all of us in some ways have been. And you may feel a lot of guilt or shame about putting aside a curriculum that you thought was a good fit for your family, or that someone else told you is the best curriculum ever. Or you might feel a lot of pressure from other people when they ask you, what curriculum do you guys use? You might feel pressure from family members, extended family, neighbors, the lady that you know at church who teaches at your local school who is a little bit judgmental of homeschooling. You might feel a lot of pressure to do things to make sure that your child doesn't fall behind or that they're doing things on the right schedule. But there's so much freedom in letting your kids learn in the way they learn best. And maybe that means a curriculum and maybe it doesn't. Now, I want to make sure I'm clear that you always need to make sure you follow whatever your local homeschooling laws are. You can find your local laws if you're in the United States from the HSLDA, and I'll put that link in the description. But you always want to make sure that you're following your local laws. And if you're in a state or a region that has really high regulation, you may have to kind of think creatively, because unschooling is not illegal in any of the 50 states. But you may have to get creative, and you may have to do a lot more documentation. You may have to really think creatively about how you are presenting the things that your child is learning. And you may have to be a little bit more upfront in your planning or where you intend to go with learning in some of these more high regulation states. Now, I am not in a high regulation state. I'm in Wisconsin. We don't have very high regulation. We have really great homeschooling laws here. But I know that I want my kids to have the option to go to college. I want them to have that option if they choose it. I'm not pressuring them to do that if that doesn't fit their, life goals or their life plans, but I want them to have the option. So I want to make a transcript for my kids that meets those traditional guidelines. That doesn't mean we have to use traditional curriculum though. So think outside of the box, be creative, join a local Facebook group dedicated to unschooling, or there are some national Facebook groups dedicated to unschooling. If you need help with this, I want to give you 2 resources that will help you. The first resource is totally free. It's called Homeschool Without School. And that is a free PDF guide that you can find on my website. You can go to siloandsage.com/interest. And on this page, you're going to find this free guide, and you're going to find a bunch more resources on interest-led learning. You're going to find some suggestions for resources and activities and blog posts and all things on my website related to interest-led, child-led learning. The other thing that I have is a full-blown course called Homeschooling the Non-School Way. And I actually walk you through in detail this process of unlearning the system mindset, of using curriculum as one tool and finding your perfect balance, and how you can meet those legal requirements, and how to do it in a practical way with actual printable resources for tracking things, and how you can incorporate things like life skills and hands-on learning and all the different experiences with curriculum if you should choose to do so. So you can find all of those things at siloandsage.com/interest. Now, if you have questions about this, or there's anything that you want me to go into more detail, please leave them in the comments below, because I would love to help you on your journey and to help you to unlearn the system mindset and to detach education from school. But if you do want to see more of the nitty-gritty of the resources that we use or the curriculum that we're choosing to bring in this year, I will link our curriculum playlist, and you can check out all of those videos. I will link it in the description, and I'll link it also at the end of the video. So if you found this helpful, give this video a like, subscribe to my channel, and I will see you soon in another video. And in the meantime, keep cultivating your home, friends. Bye.